There are a lot of misunderstandings in regards to climate change. There's also a lot of misinformation in regards to climate change. How it's changing, it's no point in going into that because it's a long, convoluted discussion, and one needs a blackboard and some chalk to be able to go through all the different variable ways that causes the climate change on Earth, and also the sudden impact of massive volcanoes and comets which suddenly arise, and they can rise at any time and change, wipe out an awful lot of life just like that. Life can be eliminated from the Earth or made extinct, or much of it can be, just by natural forces. And yes, any logical, sensible person agrees that humans should be as careful as possible when it comes to exploiting the environment, because we all, we need to love the planet Earth itself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the greed within the hierarchy, the elite itself, is causing the greater exploitation of the planet. In other words, the bankers who are now saying, all we've all got to do is think about climate change, because they're the biggest draw, because of their ego and status of being seen at Monte Carlo or wherever they do, or putting money in offshore islands in the Cayman Islands. They're the biggest actual drain on the environment itself. It's one of the greatest hypocrisies of all time that the people making the most noise about climate change are the biggest drains on the climate change, because they're the ones it costs the most out of the environment to keep. Even David Attenborough, which I really love and respect, until he got into a rather unacademic approach to the whole problem of the evolution and the cycles of things. But I digress. I want to get down to the nitty-gritty of Australia and its contribution to the global CO2. Now, without being totally au fait with all the stats, because Australia is such a large continent, as large as America, almost, and it's got such a small population, 25 million at the most, then the amount of flora that it grows naturally, when they're not setting fire to it on purpose, which they did, to make it look like climate change isn't scary. They had people arsonists to go out in the forest to burn the forest up to scare the people into the fear about climate change. It's a great shame that happened, and who was behind that. The same people pushing climate change, the great exploiters of nature and the environment. So it's a whole big contradiction by a bunch of hypocrites. But the thing is, it's very simple. The amount of flora, either agricultural flora or natural flora, growth each year, under a normal year, with a good wet year, easily takes up the amount of CO2 made in Australia by mostly its motor vehicles. It is already CO2 neutral. In other words, it's already probably CO2 neutral. The point is, the statistical fact is that Australia is 1/5 of 1 part per million of gross global CO2. Now, CO2 altogether, the humans making, is a variable about compared with the rest of the planet, all depending on how much rainfall there is across northern Europe, across Siberia. All those things have to be taken into account, because the trees have a variable growth each year depending on all sorts of things. So we can see by that you cannot say humans are a particular percentage of gross planet global CO2. There's a variable, the same as with the nature itself. It's all variables. but in Australia it's only 1/5 of a part per million of gross global CO2. So how it expects to reduce that? It reduced that 1/5 of 1 part per million. That they're making a fuss about that when it's already carbon neutral, if you like, because of the forest and the growth in agriculture. Well, it seems to me that people haven't been doing proper audit of the old venture or proper accounting of the old venture to be able to say something that Australia's involved somehow climate change and somehow it's got to wipe out the CO2. Now, I'm not against the fact that you could reduce CO2. I don't care. Academically, it makes no difference to me. But when what they're doing by pushing the anti-coal thing, which means that you cannot, as California has proven, you cannot create enough energy to run EVs, electric vehicles, and run cities and trains and storage and all that sort of, and air conditioners with renewables. It will cost trillions of dollars to do that. You can never have enough supply because you never know when the winds are going to drop out and the sun's not going to be there at night time every night anyway. So, and there's not enough lithium in the world to make enough batteries to do that. So they actually got the maths wrong and the geometrics of it wrong, and the only way to go forward in Australia would be immediately go to plan to a fully nuclear future and invest in that, so you can then run all your transport and all your infrastructure from a non-polluting source. The fact is that they're not doing that. Means they're actually extending the amount of time and the amount of volume of Australia's CO2 by reducing its ability to take up alternative transport systems. In other words, it's all one big con. Make up your own mind. I prefer to make up my own mind, do my own calculations and calibrations from my own ability, rather than listen to a politician and a banker. Listen to a politician and a banker. Why would anyone want what? Listen to a politician and a banker. They're the most honest people on earth. Yes, right. Really?